Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back, and thanks for joining me again on this coffee talk with Mac. I'm Mac, John McCarthy, and I'm glad you're here to join me today. And today, got my coffee right here. Actually, today I drank some Vermont coffee, and I had a Starbucks. You know, fresh ground coffee, robust roast, and I didn't like it that much, seriously. But this is some of my favorites right here. And I also had a Guatemala cup today. So I really like this organics brand. So I'm going to put a link to the coffee in the description. This way you get to know the coffees that I drink and stuff. And like I said, this is just a conversation over a cup of coffee about different events of the day. So today I want to talk to you about term limits and a need. We need term limits now. And this is not anything new. The call for congressional federal term limits has been going on since the inception of our country, the Constitution. But in the beginning, our framers of the Constitution didn't think it was necessary to put it in because politicians were part-time politicians. It wasn't a full-time job. The framework was engineered so the farmer, the merchant, the lawyer, the business owner, the citizen, the mill worker, everybody took a turn in running their government. That was the framework. They didn't think they had to put the wording in it. But over time, we have career politicians, and people have really gotten pissed off with the way the system is going, and they feel like it's out of control and you can't correct it. So the call for term limits has been going on for a long time. Just want to give you some stats. 1980, about 70% people polled, citizens want the term limits. 1990, that went up to about 75%. 2016 to 2020, that's anywhere from, depending on which poll you're going to listen to, that's anywhere from 85 to 95%. For the people, for the citizens of this country, the want for term limits transcends party lines. Okay, so for the citizens, this is a bipartisan approach to fixing the system, the broken system. Citizens of all nationalities, all creeds, all religions, all party affiliations want term limits, but they're running into problems. Okay, and the problems, the three biggest obstacles to term limits are, of course, Congress themselves. Okay, senators and congressmen, the House of Representatives and the Senate, they don't want term limits. Okay, and that's one thing that they're pretty good in with a bipartisan, approach about across the board, across the aisle. They don't want term limits. Okay, so put them aside because they really don't count for this. But the other two big obstacles are special interest groups, the donors, the money people, the people funding all these organizations. Okay, the people that meet with these congressmen, and so they like the status quo. They like it is now because they like to groom a politician throughout his career, and grooming can mean different things. They develop and they work on a politician and they get to know the politician and term after term. And before you know it, that politician, he's listening to the donor and not the voter. Okay. Now, the other group that is strictly against term limits because it's the same thing, they have an ulterior motives. Labor unions. Yes, labor unions. Now, we have seen the organized labor force in the country dwindle. So they might not pull as big as weight as you think they do, but in major urban areas, they still pull a lot of weight. New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Detroit, LA. So major cities, they still pull a lot of weight. But to give you an idea how the organized labor force is dwindling, 1970, 26% of the labor force was organized labor, union labor. 2020, that number went down to less than 12%. So they're losing, okay, organized labor. And the biggest drop off is in these Democratic controlled cities. Figure that one out. But they want, the same politician in there because they do the same thing. They groom them. They donate to their funds. They have their staff and their members endorse them. They endorse a politician. They tell their staff to vote for him. So one hand washes the other. So you have three groups that don't want term limits: the politicians themselves, special donors, the money people, and labor unions, right? And those are the three reasons why they don't want term limits. But the people have spoken. The numbers have increasingly gone up, the poll numbers. People want term limits. So now in Congress, there has been some movement in Congress, but it never gets out of committee. I want to give you an example with one politician. Senator Ted Cruz has introduced in committee 3 separate occasions for term limits. And he sponsored bills and he got support for those bills in 2017, 2019, and again this year, 2021. But again, doesn't make it to the Senate floor for a vote. They keep killing that on him. Now, there's a little caveat with that. And the reason why he's introducing this bill for legislation. He's trying to introduce a constitutional amendment for term limits. His proposal is senators get 2 terms and congressmen get 3 terms. But it doesn't work its way out of committee, doesn't make it to the floor. Now, there was a test to this, and it was a Supreme Court case, term limits versus Thornton in 1994. And basically, the Supreme Court stated they pushed it back to Congress, saying there should be a congressional amendment to the Constitution for term limits because states have rights. Okay, so the states have rights to not abide by it. So the states and the federal law has to work cohesively. So the Supreme Court pushed it back to Congress, saying it should be a congressional amendment. And that's what some of the things that Ted Cruz was trying to do. And those are the bills that he's trying to introduce. But listen, it's a problem. And here's why it's a problem. I want to give you 2 numbers that are really incredible. So the longest serving senator is Senator Byrd from West Virginia. 51 years he served. You remember Senator Byrd, the Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard? Yeah, but he found redemption, and he's a mentor to many of his politicians. Anyway, he served 51 years. And the longest serving member of the House of Representatives is Dingell from Michigan. Okay, he served 59 years. 59 years. That's about 30 times he was reelected, basically. 30 times. He didn't finish his last term because he died, but 30 terms, 30 times he was elected. He was elected once and reelected 29 times. And part of the call for term limits is that we're going to get the politician to concentrate on politics and concentrate on fixing the nation, especially Congress people. A representative, a congressperson serves 2 years. Half that time, they're campaigning. Okay, and there's a lot of money in camp. They get a lot of funds to help them with their campaign. Now, here's why it's so important for term limits. It's almost impossible to defeat an incumbent, especially if the incumbent has the backing of the party. The only way an incumbent loses if the party's not totally backing them. To give you some numbers here, there are 435 representatives, 100 senators. That's 535 senators and representatives in the country. 90 to 95% of the time, they get reelected. Okay, and it's not even close. 90 to 95% of the time, they get reelected. Why? There are many reasons for this. Gerrymandering, redlining. Okay, so they control the districts. Both parties work together to make sure they share power, make sure they get reelected. So this is the way it works, folks. You know, it's a two-party system. It's supposed to be a democracy, but it's really not a true democracy because you have a small percentage. Basically, the party is picking a candidate and then telling you choose from who we pick. That's not a democracy. It's not open campaigns like that. So that's crazy. So we need term limits. We need it now. We have a whole list of people in there that should be out. The country is not made for career politicians. You know, the people have spoken, but the politicians have ignored them. I want to give an example with New York State. We saw this in New York City, right? New York City passed term limits. Giuliani, when he ran, there was you can only run for 2 terms. Then 9/11 happened, all right? He couldn't be reelected again. He actually asked the city council to pass a resolution to keep him on for a year or 2 or 1 more term for special exigent circumstances. They said no. And incidentally, the man who ran in that November, Mike Bloomberg, was very vocal about it, said, no, the people have spoken. Although you did well as a mayor, your time is up, you got to go. And lo and behold, in the middle of, near the end of Bloomberg's 2nd term, guess what he does? Okay. He gets the city council, he increases their stipend money, gives them a raise, gives the city council more power. And what do? They vote to knock out term limits and he gets reelected for a 3rd term. Talk about being a hypocrite, huh? And that's the swamp right there. You know, so it's something we need. We need term limits. You got to speak, you got to be vocal about it. And unless Congress, you know, we need a constitutional amendment for term limits for senators and for congressmen. On the state level, on the local level, they could enact term limits. They're allowed to do that. But as we saw, you know, money talks and bullshit walks. And so, you know, politicians don't care what the people have to say. They really don't. It's about special interest groups, it's about money, and it's about people who are going to fund their reelection. So what's your ideas on this? I'd like you to leave comments. Do you agree that we need term limits? Please let me know. I already know that we need finance reform, you know, campaign finance reform, but let's start with term limits. So do you agree we need term limits? If not, tell me so. If you do, tell me you agree, and you know, leave a comment down and I'd like to discuss it with you. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Okay, that little fighting Irish guy over there in the corner, please hit subscribe. Throw your support my way. I appreciate it. And Wednesday night is going to be another video. I think Wednesday night, maybe we'll talk about campaign finance reform, but they should go hand in hand with term limits. Term limits is something we need. You know, I was going to give you some stats on it. I told you about the Supreme Court decision. You know, so people say that, check this out from the politicians. Oh, we don't need term limits because we want seasoned politicians. No, the people have spoken. We want to drain the swamp. We want to get rid of the seasoned politicians. The seasoned politicians are what's wrong with this country. Okay, we need fresh blood. The country's not going to fall apart. We need new ideas. We need new way of thinking. We need people to think out of the box. And we need new people in there with a new approach and people to be held accountable. Okay, so congressional term limit amendment, constitutional amendment, stop the gerrymandering and get the career politicians out. So if you like this video, hit like, okay, leave a comment, let me know what you think, and hit the little subscribe button. Okay, and I'll see you Wednesday night, and we'll talk about campaign finance reforms. And if you have a topic for Friday, please let me know, and we'll just, and what people decide, we'll talk about on Friday. So let me know what you think. Thank you. Take care.